بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على خاتم النبيين وإمام المرسلين نبينا وإمامنا وحبيبنا وقدوتنا محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين وصحابته المخلصين المجاهدين. وبعد، فهذا هي الاجتماعات الدورية لمناقشة القضايا الفكرية والعقدية والفلسفية والفقهية. أظن اليوم هناك بعض المسائل التي نريد أن نتكلم عنها. Come with your question.
That was my first question. Yeah. Give us a general introduction of what Maqasid is.
I have to cut that now.
Okay,
Make it start again. No. When I finish the introduction, you start with a question.
Okay.
Before that.
Don't worry about cutting and stuff.
No, it will take infinite minutes. It can't be smooth without cutting if we just focus on. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على خاتم النبيين وإمام المرسلين نبينا وإمامنا وحبيبنا وقدوتنا محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين وصحبه المخلصين المجاهدين. بعد، فهذه إحدى جلساتنا الدورية لمناقشة شتى القضايا العقدية والفقهية والفكرية المتعلقة بالإسلام والدعوة الإسلامية. وأظن اليوم هناك بعض الأمور متعلقة بالمقاصد والمفاسد. إسماعيل.
Yeah. First question I'd like to ask is, could you give us a general introduction to what Maqasid Sharia is?
This issue of Maqasid has been in recent years blown out of proportion, motivated most likely by the defeat of Islamic intellectuals in front of the Western secular onslaught. Secularism is based on immediate benefit and harm. The state is supposed to manage the affairs according to quote and unquote rationality, as perceived from immediate benefit and harm. For example, this substance is harmful, so the state or a rational person should not take this substance and digest it, and the state, being the manager of general affairs, should prohibit the sale or distribution or restrict the sale and distribution of this dangerous substance to protect the public, because not everyone is capable of self-protection, not everyone is savvy enough. Or if the substance is having some harmful side effects like alcoholic beverages, then the state should discourage it by levying heavier taxes. So you have to pay a high penalty on money the only harm and benefit in the secular framework is immediate bodily, physical, psychological, social harm and benefit. There is no issues of harm and benefit in the hereafter, and the issue of the hereafter is not even a matter of discussion, because secularism started, as we know, as a compromise between the church and the people of religion on one hand, and the general public and the intellectuals, and possibly the kings at the beginning on the other hand. Originally, kings allied with the intellectual to defeat the church and enforce state power, because the church was interfering with the state, and the European states, mostly feudal systems at that time, in the late Middle Ages, were very weak because of this interference. But the state needs a center of power and management in a proper way. So this is a reasonable goal to get the state really organized so that it can enforce itself and work as a proper state, managing the affairs as should be. So they kicked the church out. Later on, the kings became very oppressive and allied with the church against the intellectual and against the public. So the public and the intellectual allied against the powers at that time, and many kings got decapitated and unseated, etc. But in that compromise, the issues, always issues, what the legitimacy of the king, what the legitimacy of the government, what the legitimacy of morality, it was referred always to religion. Then, obviously, with the age of enlightenment and it's called age of reason, and discussing the roots of Christianity, which have been found to be relatively weak and not very well unfounded, de facto it's boiled down to the statement of the Christians is a matter of faith. You believe in it, you trust it. Rational evidences are not there. So the Christians are also guilty of this crime, that they declared faith to be purely irrational, having no evidences. And the Second said, yes, indeed, there are no evidences, but if there is no evidence, I cannot force someone who is rational to agree with me on a religious issue. So religion should be a private matter. You believe that Jesus died for you on the cross, that's fine. You believe for it, but you cannot conclude anything which is relevant for the society or the rational human beings around you. If they agree with you, then you may set an association or a church and manage that within that scope. But you cannot come forward and say, this indicates that, for example, extramarital relations are prohibited and the state should prosecute them. Now, that's off limit. That's not for you. That's for the society and for the reason to establish, because you have no evidence that this religion is having any rational foundation. So rational people should not make that as a base for the social life, at least. That was the origin of secularism, a compromise to manage and go in life forward without having a bloody confrontation with all religious people. So the religious people were satisfied, this is a matter of faith, it's your private faith, nobody's interfering with you in that, but public affairs should be managed according to public interest and issues related to the benefit of persons and nations. Later on, secularism developed into a full-scale ideology and philosophy by claiming that these religious issues are not even matter of proof whatsoever, they are unprovable. So it became an ideology. It's a negative ideology, because if you claim such a fundamental statement that God exists is not provable, then you are definitely making a very tall order. We know this is wrong, but that's the basic philosophical foundation of secularism. That's unprovable, and even if it's unprovable, then God itself is subject to certain moral principles. He has to obey these moral principles like we obey them. And since both of us agree on the moral principles, so what's the fuss about him and his revelation? His revelation is irrelevant. He ought not to reveal anything contradicting our reason. So it developed into such extremes, which can be obviously undermined by proper rational analysis, which has been undermined recently quite frequently. So this Western onslaught, which looks only on immediate benefit and harm in this world, in the society, immediately, put so many questions like, why is pork prohibited? Why is multi-marriage or polygamy is permissible? Why is homosexuality prohibited? Why is this? Why is not? What is the? And the question is, what is the immediate benefit or harm? So on this onslaught, some Muslim activists who still are Muslim believers, but they are defeated, they looked in the Islamic tradition to find how they can answer these questions. And they found that the classical scholars did study a topic called Maqasid Sharia. They analyzed in time past that the Sharia, many laws are not laws by themselves alone for their own sake.
Maqasid in English.
Purposes, objectives
yeah.
of the Sharia. Maqsad. Like for example, I find you going with a car. Where are you going? What is your maqsad? What's your destination? Where are you going to? What's your objective? I'm going to the high road to shop something. That's maqsad. They studied that from philosophical point of view, partly also influenced by Greek philosophy, and also because some scholars made some mistakes which we'll clarify in a few seconds. And they thought they have the Sharia has certain gaps they have to fill by analysis like Maqasid Sharia, istihsan, finding what is the best, or sometimes what they call qiyas, which is analogy, and various rational means to fill these gaps.
Blocking the means to an evil.
That's an extra point, etc. All of these are so-called pseudo-rational principles. I say pseudo-rational deliberately because they are not rational. We show that they are irrational, they lead to contradiction. But at a quick look from a jurist is usually not a philosopher or theologian. So he will not go into the depth of theological and philosophical issues to see where are the deep contradiction issues. But Muslim believers should fundamentally start from the Islamic creed and go from there, not the opposite way. And they were starting from the Islamic creed. Then no one, as far as I know from the classical scholars, until the fall or until the Khilafah Uthmaniyya became so weak that it became a shadow of itself, no one ever claimed that maslaha or mafsada, benefit or harm, will negate or abrogate any injunction of the Sharia. Only one amazingly Hanbali scholars in the 80s, At-Tufi, is famous as At-Tufi, he said, since the previous scholar said, and Ibn Taymiyyah, which is a great mind and a big philosopher, made a blunder saying the Sharia has come just to complete maslaha and to reduce mafsada, to achieve as much benefits and maslaha as possible and prevent as much harm and corruption as possible. That's the purpose why the Sharia has come. Because of that, he said, if that's the purpose of the Sharia, and the scholars have studied that, I don't know if the Tufi is before Shatibi or after, but the Shatibi was in Andalusia just short before the fall of the Andalusian. So maybe he's after, he read that, or he's before, but he has enough precedences encouraging him. He said, even because now from him, from reading so many texts and deducing so many maslaha and mafsada, so many benefits and harms, which the legal instruction or the legal system of the Sharia enforces, he concluded that since the Sharia, according to his faulty and irrational point of view, has come solely and exclusively, that's the point, to complete all benefits and to prevent all harms for human beings, then this is qat'i, this is definite, this is the purpose of the Sharia. And then he dared to go one step, say, if one single evidence to the Sharia contradict the general maslaha, then we regard that as being abrogated. And that's where most scholars of his time declared takfir on him, that he's a kafir. Because if you allow that a single injunction can be declared to be abrogated or set aside by the general maslaha and mafsada, then you can set all Sharia injunctions aside. There is nothing which will indicate why this should be aside and why this should not be aside. And the whole Sharia is gone. Then all your statement that has come from maslaha has been upside down. So you have undermined your own base. It will go back undermining the Sharia itself if it is done. And they recognize that. So if you permit that one single injunction can be removed because it's not according to maslaha, then you have the tool to remove all injunctions, and then the whole Sharia is being removed. But this contradicts your claim that the Sharia has come to complete maslaha and mafsada. So there's some kind of contradiction in the Sharia. It can't be. So they declare takfir on him. We're not going now to do takfir or no takfir. That's not our purpose.
Do they have any specific evidences for that? To make that claim? Ibn Taymiyyah?
Just istiqra'. Just general istiqra'. Just general istiqra'.
Or does it not rely on the hadith that says no harm shall be inflicted or reciprocated in Islam?
Yeah, that's our established hadith, but this is harm. Harm is something which can be measured either physically or psychologically. And this is a general rule. Like, for example, let's assume I have the right to carry, for example, my sword outside the sheet. But if I'm going in the market, carrying the sword bare is liable to injure someone. The sword is very sharp. Touching anyone will injure him. This will cause harm. So that's the reason in the market you are obliged to put your sword in the sheet. Or if you have, in time past, people will have their own collection of arrows in their back, in the back bag of the arrows. And then Allah said, if you come with your arrows in the market, then hold with your hand on the sharp part of the arrow, or cover it so that you don't harm Muslims. So the harm means a physical injury, something which happened. And we know by necessity it will happen. Maybe by someone who is alert and very, very cautious it won't happen, but many others it will happen. Sometimes you are alert, but someone will slip and fall on you, on your bare sword, and get cut or even killed. So the sword has to be in its sheath, etc., unless you are in a battlefield, obviously. So things like that is very clear. This is the general rule, that no harm should be inflicted and so on. And they generalize that. But the problem is that this is part of the Sharia. The Sharia made that injunction to start with. So you cannot take that to make the Sharia or undermine the other aspects of the Sharia.
But it says in Islam, the hadith says, if I could just cite it again, no harm shall be inflicted or reciprocated in Islam.
Yeah, that's the same hadith. So another narration.
He's using that as his whole principle, saying that if there's something that harms or benefits us, that's the whole basis of.
We'll come to that fine point now. Yeah. The problem in time past, the fuqaha were analyzing that like an appendix in usul al-fiqh or an appendix on fiqh to show that the Sharia is consistent. It serves human needs in dunya. etc. But it was never regarded as a principle to derive law. There's a major difference between, is this a principle to derive law, or it is just to show how good the lawmaker was, or how kind he was to enact the laws in such a way that they will fulfill this benefit. You see, there's a difference, and we will see the fundamental difference soon with more when we go deeper to the matter. More supportive for them may be the ayahs in Surah Al-A'raf, when Allah talks about what had happened to the Israelites when they asked to see Allah immediately and without any veil, and they were struck with lightning and they died and they were resurrected, and then Musa was supplicating for mercy, etc. Allah answered him an answer which is partly also reserved in Deuteronomy, but what interests us is the full answer which is given in the Quran. So Musa was supplicating, have mercy on them, give us in this dunya a beautiful result and in akhirah, etc. Allah answered, عذابي أصيب به من أشاء. Allah said, عذابي أصيب به من أشاء. My punishment will hit whomever I want from a torture. ورحمتي وسعت كل شيء. My mercy will encompass everything. It's wide enough to encompass everything. But this will be not open for every Tom and Dick and Harry. It will be restricted for whom? فسأكتبها. I will write it down. I will restrict it to those who are God aware, those who are evil, الذين يتقون ويؤتون الزكاة والذين هم بآياتنا يؤمنون. Those who are muttaqin, who are of evil, who are aware of Allah, and who give the zakat. Salah is not mentioned here because this is part of the taqwa, but because the zakat is very important. It's a place where people are really tested. And those who believe in our signs, in our revelations. This is a wider category. Comes many people of Musa, but Allah restricted further. The most of that mercy will go to those who follow الذين يتبعون الرسول النبي الأمي. Those who follow the messenger, the prophet, the illiterate. الذي يجدونه مكتوبا عندهم في التوراة والإنجيل. The one who they find in their books, in the Torah and in the Gospels written. And any fair-minded person, that is not our topic today, when you go to the Gospel and Torah and see the prophecies about the prophet to come, will find most of them, the relevant and heavy ones of them, do fit only on Muhammad alayhi salam. Some do fit on Isa, some do fit on other prophets. That's no doubt about that, because many other prophets would have been foretold before, especially the Messiah and the Messiah was foretold, the Christ was foretold before. But many places where, for example, the Christian twist the Old Testament to show that it is giving the prophecy of Isa, it does not fit to Isa. But it's not our topic today. So it fits them. They find that. If they are fair, they will find it. What are the characteristics of this illiterate prophet messenger who will come later, in time, who has come, Muhammad, who is written in their books? What is his characteristic? يأمرهم بالمعروف وينهاهم عن المنكر. He commands all goods and prohibits all evil, or commands all what's reasonable. Ma'ruf is actually what's reasonable, what's acceptable, and prohibits or injunction to avoid all the rejectionables, munkar, all things which are rejectionable. ويحل لهم الطيبات ويحرم عليهم الخبائث. And he make lawful for them or make halal for them الطيبات, the good things, and prohibits, make unlawful or prohibits the filthy or the evil things. Moreover, ويضع عنهم إصرهم والأغلال التي كانت عليهم, and he will remove away from their necks and their feet the yokes and the chains which have been on them. Because the people in the previous scripture were under such injunction which will be like yokes on their necks and chains in their feet. They were chained and under yoke by the injunction, by divine injunctions. We will come to that also. لأن الله قال فالذين آمنوا به وعزروه ونصروه واتبعوا النور الذي أنزل معه أولئك هم المفلحون. Those who believe in him, follow him and support him and follow the light which has been revealed to him, these are the successful ones. But this is not our topic. Our topic, this final messenger has been characterized by that he not only commands all ma'ruf and prohibits all evil, but also a more distinct thing is that he is the one who make lawful or make halal, make permissible all the good things, and make haram, non-permissible, all the filthy and evil things. Now it is clear, Allah is saying, if the Quran is from Allah and it's literal words, then Allah is eloquent enough not to say He permits whatever permitted. This would be tautology. Permits the permitted, does not make any sense. So there must be some concept called good things and some concept called haram things. Yeah? Haram meaning by divine injunction. You should not do that. Example that Allah can prohibit something which is good in itself is the prohibition for Adam to eat from the tree. Whatever the tree was, but all scholars of Christianity, Islam and Judaism agree that the tree would have been either an apple tree or wheat, and we all agree that these are among the best foods you could imagine. Apple is one of the best of the foods, and wheat is one of the best of the seeds. So this is good in itself. Good meaning, in the physical sense, nutritious, filling, healthy. There's nothing bad and evil in that. An apple, for example, let's take it as an example, as an apple. It's quite delicious also. So it's quite good. But it was for Adam prohibited. So Allah is at liberty to prohibit something which is good if He wants. But there is no necessary synchronization, no obligation on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to permit all goods. Or no obligation or anything prohibiting Him from prohibiting something which is good, like prohibiting Adam from eating the tree. For Bani Israel, we know quite a number of things have been prohibited for them, but the Quran says clearly, فَبِظُلْمِ الَّذِينَ هَادُوا حَرَّمْنَا عَلَيْهِمْ طَيِّبَاتٍ أُحِلَّتْ لَهُمْ وَبِصَدِّهِمْ عَنْ سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ كَثِيرًا. Because of their transgressions, we have prohibited on them good things which were previously permitted. Because the Quran says clearly.
And with that.
So Allah is the sovereign Lord. In His legislative command does not need to be synchronized. Now, before we go to the legislative command and the creative command, Allah has two types of decisions and commands. Legislative, an order which can be obeyed or not obeyed from beings which are having a free will and sufficient rationality to obey or not disobey. That's called a legislative command, Amr Shari or Qada Shari. Legislative judgment, Sharia judgment. Another one is the creative command. Creative command is, I said, be, then it happens. There's no obedience or disobedience there. The creative command. Now these things which are called good in the universe, like the apple tree. Let's focus on one to make it simple for you and for the listener. The apple tree is good. How come it has become good? Is that any authority above Allah forcing him to make the apple good? No, it's by the universe being designed this way, kick-started in such a way, developing in such a way by initiation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, ultimately known by Allah in the beginning that it will develop into human beings, it will develop into apple trees, and the apple trees will be good for a human being, but maybe poisonous for some insects. We don't know. But for us it's quite good. And that, for example, the excrement of human, which is quite filthy and nasty for humans, would be quite a good food for some bacteria. That's by whom? By whose design? Is there any authority above Allah forcing to do that? It's by Allah's design. By Allah creative command. So that some things are good is by Allah creative command. And creative judgment and creative qada and qadar. That things are permitted or not permitted, halal or haram, is by Allah legislative command. And in both areas He is the absolute sovereign. There is no authority above Him. Nor is there any reason rationally or any authority above Him. He is the only authority. He is the ultimate authority, which will force Him to synchronize both. And they were asynchronous sometimes. The Quran is clear in that. If someone believes the Quran is from Allah, then Allah cannot be lying there that there have been prohibition for Bani Israel for things which are good, which were permitted for Israel, for example. And in that place there, كل الطعام كان حلال. All food was permitted for Bani Israel. إلا ما حرم إسرائيل على نفسه من قبل أن تنزل التوراة. Except that what Israel, Yaqub, prohibited for himself as a nether or something like that. At the time it was permitted to do that for prophets, not for our Prophet. And this is the Torah, go and read it. And later on Musa made more injunctions. And later on, because of their translation, more prohibition have come. Yeah, more prohibition. On the other hand, we know that intoxicating beverages are evil in the sense that they have Satan repercussions, which we know. We'll discuss it maybe in a little detail. Still, they were permitted for Bani Israel. All what was prohibited is that you should not get drunk, but drinking for it a small amount. Well, obviously, most people will not stop at a small amount. So again, Allah does not care about blocking the means in time past. You can drink, but don't get drunk. If you get drunk, you are sinful. For example.
Hang on, just to stop you there and summarise what you said, because there's quite a lot to digest. You're saying that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has two types of commands.
Yeah.
One's a creative, one is a creative command. Another one is the legislative command. And in this legislative command, he can, for something that he considers to be good, that Allah considers
No, it's created to be good.
Considers and he's created to be.
It has to be good by Allah's created.
Okay, something that he has created to be good. He can prohibit his servants from
that good
benefiting from
it. Yeah.
As a legislation.
Okay. And they will be
Right.
sinful and they will punish them on Qiyamah for disobedience.
Okay.
We give the example of the tree of Adam and the example of some good things to Bani Israel. For example, some camel meat, some parts of the fat of the body, not all fat, some fats, and some and the milk of the camels.
Okay. Sorry to stop you.
Yeah.
You can,
So that's we have to keep in mind.
yeah.
So now there's no authority of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala making him to synchronize. It is very clear that if he permits all good things or permits good things and prohibits bad things only, that will be an act of mercy. He's coming forward to you with a merciful gesture. Look, I have permitted you all good things, like in the final revelation, and prohibited essentially all good things, and prohibited essentially only the bad things. So be happy that I made a legislation which is beneficial and easy for you. Yeah, it's easy for you. Relatively easy, because there's some hardship even in any command. Someone could easily say, okay, fine, Allah could have been even kinder, and instead of making wajib and haram, abolish all wajib, make it just desirable. Salah is desirable. If you want to pray, you pray, you will get reward. But it's good for you, it will enlighten your heart and soothe your spirit, it will be good for your brain, the God complex in your brain, that's all of that. You will not be punished if you leave it. That will be even merciful. That will be kinder. And prohibition, this is prohibit, this is bad for you, avoid it. That's my advice to you. But if you do it, I'm not going to punish you. It will be even kinder. It will be much kinder, much easier going. An easier going God. You could have been that if you wanted. That's it. So these issues will end nowhere, because ultimately there is no authority above Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and there is no rationality compelling him. Now how come that in earlier Islamic history and before that for example, especially the Mu'tazila, when they were rationalizing, say Allah is obliged to do the best, not only the good, the best for his creation, and he's obliged to prevent the worst for his creation. That came from an analysis of the Greek philosophy. The Greek philosophers analyze who is wise. The wise one is the one who does the best and avoid the worst. The one who tries to put things in the right place. This is obviously a wise human being would be like that. Otherwise he'd be unwise if someone does not put things in the right place and strive to achieve the best for himself and for those who are under his responsibility. Then he's not wise, he's foolish. But they have neglected one point. This definition of wisdom, putting things in the right place, fits only if it fits very well for Ismail, for example. He sits in front of me, he's a wise chap. But Ismail is a finite being. He doesn't have a control over these walls. So if he builds a building, he will be wisely doing good supporting beam, otherwise it will collapse on him and crush him. Yeah?
Yeah.
And if he wants to go to planning a trip, then he will be wisely filling the gasoline before the trip instead of stopping everywhere, and then maybe one gasoline station may be empty and so on. He's planning properly because he has no control of the gasoline in the station. He's a finite being. He has so many external conditions to fight with. But if we're dealing with the infinite being of infinite power, who was at the beginning alone, which consideration he has to take in place? There's no consideration whatsoever. There's nothing around him. The only thing there is him, nothing else. So what to put in the right place? There is no right place to define the place. He is the only right thing there. Yeah, there's nothing else to be put. So the wisdom for the finite being, putting things in the right place, does not apply to an infinite being who initiates everything. He has to ultimately, in the final, I don't want to go to the philosophical involved argument which we have in the book of Tawheed, read that Allah in the ultimate calculation, in the final instance, does not do anything compelled by any compelling reason. He may synchronize things together in a very complex way, but ultimate in the final analysis, after so many steps, maybe trillions of steps, maybe quadrillion of steps, ultimately it ends into a free decision. because he's the free agent, the ultimate free. The alternative will be, because he's a necessarily existing being, he's an infinite being. The alternative to be is, if he's not a free agent, he's a mechanism. Absolute mechanism, a machine, grinding from eternity to eternity without any will or any knowledge. The divine concept of God in Aristotle's mind was such a machine. But it was a bit complicated. That would not fit the taste of Aristotle, nor his feeling of what wisdom and philosophy should be. So he imagined the divine being, a being who is only concerned about himself, reflecting and enjoying his own beauty, not knowing anything outside. Because knowing anything outside would be a deficiency, according to Aristotle. And the universe is also eternal, co-eternal with Allah. So we have a God here and the universe. And the universe, the reason he postulates God, the eternal one, the one who is only concerned and knowing only about himself, is that the universe has something you must move it. And this one, the divine, is the mover. And the universe moves, tries to develop in perfection to come closer to Allah somehow. That's the reason there is movement in the universe. Otherwise, a movement cannot be without a mover, an initial mover. This is the initial mover. So in such a concept, it is very well possible, because we don't have even Sharia injunction, we don't have anything that all laws and legislation should be looking at benefit and harm from the wise man or a wise philosopher point of view, how things are synchronized and fit together, but not from a creator who are free being. Now, obviously, the Mu'tazila and the earlier Mutakallimin did not take, and even the early philosophers like Al-Kindi did not take this Aristotelian philosophy, because it will be clear kufr, it will contradict Islam, it contradicts also reason. It can be demolished easily. That's the reason many philosophers deserted earlier. So they assumed Allah is a free agent, but they could not get out of the fiction that the wise actor will do only the best or the most synchronized things, because they kept comparing Allah to the creation. But the definition of wisdom for Allah is different completely different than the definition of wisdom for finite beings, because he is not under any duress. He's the absolute free. So in the final conclusion, but let's go now to the Sharia. This may be too much excursion in the philosophical. That's very important to keep in mind, because any statement to the contrary will lead you to problems with the Aqidah and the concept of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and lead to contradiction in the concept of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And which is not possible, because Allah is al-Haqq al-Mubin, the evident truth. The evident truth cannot have any contradiction in itself. That's not possible. So based on that, the early phases in the 2nd century, 3rd century, they were studying the Sharia, and so say, prohibiting murder is because it will protect human life, and this means the human species will not get extinct, because if you permit murder, people will be killing each other, and then it's protection of the self. It is a good by itself. Yeah, it is a good by itself. But also the question arises, if it's a good by itself, and this is really so important that Allah has no other way except to prohibit murder, whether he's letting the people expire one after one in such an infinite series. See?
But is that not the case with the Sharia, though? Somebody could argue. I mean, for example, I know you're going to come at this at a later
that's
stage.
the argument. I'm just trying to deduce the argument. So what I'm saying, this is a consideration may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has had when prohibited murder, but it's not that what compelled him to do that. Make a difference between compelling, because what is imagine it's compelling. That's the problem. If it is compelling, then it is a illah, which you can deduce law from it. If it is not compelling, it's an objective which can be achieved and can be left aside.
But can it be left aside?
It happens.
From a rational point of view. Let's say, for example,
not in Sharia, but in reality, there's still many murders happening despite prohibition. So if Allah is so keen to prevent killing, he would have made mechanisms which made killing impossible, and there was no need for Sharia either. The first part.
Okay,
you see my point?
If I was to give an example, maybe it could shed a bit of light on what I'm trying to say, and maybe do a bit of justice for people who do,
Yeah, go ahead.
propagate Maqasid Sharia. They'll say, for example, if you look at Islam, it says, do not murder. It says, cut the hand of the thief. Adultery, whether you agree stoning or not stoning, let's say stoning the adulterer, you can see the benefits that it's trying to...
No, it's denying the benefit.
Yeah, trying to
the problem is
propagate
that they claim the benefit is the one who obliged Allah to enact the law. That's the problem. Makes a reason of the law. Reason is that what obliged Allah to do that. I'm saying there's no reason obliging Allah to make all these injunctions. The only thing is that because He's the divine, the sovereign,
do they say that
the only thing motivating Him to enact all these laws is that He wants the creation to be submissive to Him. وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. Submit. That He happened to have things which are beneficial in the utmost, in most cases, and befitting the human nature and bringing a more stable society is an act of pure mercy, but there's no obligation in Him.
Yeah, but do this?
You see my point?
Want to say that it's actually Allah's obliging Himself?
No, that's the conclusion, because this is the Sharia has come because of that.
Yeah, but that could also be Allah's will. Allah's not saying I'm.
No, because He said clearly in the Quran He did not do that in previous nations. This very clearly. So He's not obliged. He can't do otherwise.
Yeah, but maybe they've got it right. Maybe the Sharia has come to benefit.
No, it has not.
Okay, so are you trying to say that Allah is commanding us? Hang on, if I could just say, are you saying that when Allah commands us or prohibits us, like a command in Islam is harmful? Is that
no,
what
I'm not saying
saying?
it's harmful. A command is to be
Islam?
obeyed. The reason for giving the command is to test your obedience.
Your parents?
No.
Yeah.
It is a command to test your obedience. That's the primary point. All other things are secondary. They claim the primary point is to be kind to your parents because it's good and to keep the society intact. That's not. The primary is that obedience to Allah Ta'ala is the obedience.
So why did the Prophet always give through his Sunnah to pick the easier of the two options? And there's also a concept of the
that's something else.
So
that
it shows that it's always giving you
this is by Allah's command. And He wants you to take the rukhsa. If He gives you a rukhsa, He wants you to take the rukhsa, and He will be angry if you don't take the rukhsa.
Right, hang on, I've got a few examples here that I jotted down before. Let's say there's a verse that's, don't say right and I say unzurana, which is putting a ban on insulting idol worshippers because that may lead them to insult Allah. So Allah's trying to block an evil there, yeah? Another example.
The evil is happening. There is something Allah all the time. But for you believer, you should not insult their idols.
Alright, let me just run for you.
And He gives you a bad result of insulting the idols, that they will maybe in their ignorance will insult Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
I'll give you a chance to respond in a minute, but let me just run through a few of them. The Prophet forbade the killing of the Munafiqeen because he said there could be rumours that Muhammad kills his companions.
I know this, but that's a mistake. There's a mistaken conclusion.
Okay, like I said, let me just run through them. There's only a few. There's only 3 or 4, and then you've got a chance to respond. The Prophet, about killing the Munafiqeen because there could be rumours that he kills his companions. So he wanted to block the evil of people undermining Islam and spreading dissension amongst the Muslim community. I don't know how valid this is. I need to check it, but they say that there's no had punishment in battle campaigns in case the fighters defect. I didn't have a chance to check any hadith on this. But let's just assume that one as well, that in time of famine or something like that, Sharia is suspended to make it easy upon the people. But when you look at all these rules, when you're looking at these rules, you can see that Allah is saying to us, I want you to have an easy life. I want things to be nice for you. I want you to have a nice society. Hang on. I want you to have a nice society. I want things to be tranquil. I know human beings. I know you make mistakes, and I'm putting these laws in place so that I can maximise your benefit for good living. Now, along comes yourself, and you're saying that no. Well, I could be misquoting you. You're saying no, Sharia. There's no benefit in Sharia.
No, that's not what they say. What they say, the benefit of Sharia is not what moved Allah to enact the laws. It is not the primary mover. It's not the primary reason of the Sharia. The primary reason of the Sharia is to enslave the servants and test their servitude.
Do you have
this is very clear. Two things.
You're going to quote the verse.
No, the two things are very clear. First of all, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. I did not create jinn and human except to worship me, to submit to me. And we know submission meaning obedience. هذه عبادة. Not lighting candles as you know, like some primitive mind states. That's it.
Yes, so true.
Secondly, الذي خلق الموت والحياة ليبلوكم أيكم أحسن عملا. The one who created life and death to test you who will perform better deeds and best deeds. So life and death had been created to test, for performing better deeds.
Right, in Surah Al-Mulk.
And the testing will be by injunctions, by order. Do this and don't do that, and see if you comply or don't comply. Okay. And the only sound, solid definition of good deeds is compliance with the law, with Allah's commandments.
Okay. And then you're saying, as a derivative of that, you do get some benefits from...
Oh yeah, that's His mercy.
Okay.
He's merciful, definitely.
Yeah.
But the problem with these, let's say, Maqasid Sharia, they reverse things upside down. What Allah has produced as a side effect, a secondary side effect, beneficial for you.
They've made that...
They made that the reason of the law.
Objective.
I am saying the reason of the law is that Allah is not looking to dunya. He's looking to akhirah. And the Prophet said, if the dunya would have been even worth like a wing of a fly in Allah's eye, He would not give a kafir even one drink of it. It's completely irrelevant for him. For him, it's akhirah relevant. Because it's infinite while dunya is finite. If you look at it in mathematical terms, dunya is nil. So all benefit in dunya are secondary. So how can anyone claim that the injunction has come exclusively and mostly to fulfill benefits of dunya?
I don't think
unless you say benefits
in the material.
That's what they mean. No,
they don't. They don't mean benefits in the material sense.
The benefit for akhirah is obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's nothing there remaining.
No, for example, they will say, some of the examples that they're giving is, these things that we're blocking is the evil that we don't want you to transgress in the Sharia. For example, the reason why a man and a woman can't be in a room alone, they'll say the purpose of the Sharia is so that it prevents a harm.
Okay, and what? But the reason and there's no harm. It prevents an extramarital relation.
Exactly.
An extramarital relation, they claim to prevent, number one, for example, the mixture of the genealogy. Yeah. Someone could argue this is nonsense because the genealogy could be going through the mother, so it doesn't matter who's the father.
Yeah, but
you don't need to know the name of the father. It's irrelevant. And sometimes say to prevent spreading disease, no problem. We will have treatment. We have now syphilis, and when I mean we have now medicine. When the medicine for syphilis in the early 20th century was found, there was a big banner in one newspaper saying, "Hooray! Now we can fornicate as much as we like." So we could, there will be illegitimate children. Okay, then please people use condoms and be more cautious. Use safe sex. Every argument will have a counter argument, not 100% valid, but considerably valid. It's not going to work this way. What's ultimately, and it's not going to work with the apple tree or with the wheat tree for Adam. It's not going to work. It's just pure testing of obedience. Nothing else whatsoever. Nothing else whatsoever.
So when Allah says in the Quran,
and then
وَمَا رَسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ, that we say as a mercy. Now, this is what the proponents of Maqasid use, that Allah is merciful, He sent the message as a mercy. So if Allah is merciful, He's not going to put hardship on.
Well, I'm not saying He's putting hardship, but see, this is not the motivation. He said Muhammad Rahman al-Alamin.
It's not going to be easy. Allah says that, do you think that you're going to enter into the paradise that does before you?
The Rahman al-Alamin for Muhammad is only for those who believe in him and follow him. If you don't believe him, it will be a damnation for you, and you in hellfire. It has not been a rahmah then.
No, but we're talking about those who are worshipping Him.
Yeah, but Allah said that Rahman al-Alamin, not for the believer only, for the whole universe, for the mankind. And many have ended in hellfire because of Him, because they don't accept the rahmah. So you have to accept the rahmah. It doesn't work like that. This rahmah does not mean that Khamr has been prohibited because people get intoxicated and men are vicious and go and beat their wives. That's a bad aspect of Khamr, and it has mentioned clearly in the Quran. Allah when prohibited Khamr say the devil wants to instigate between you hatred and disputes in Khamr and Maisir.
The Rahmatul Alamin.
And Allah wanted to prevent that out of His mercy of Himself.
It's not the Rahmatul Alamin. It doesn't apply to the kuffar or to the.
It is a rahmah which is offered and they have rejected. So it turns out to condemnation. Maybe someone who did not hear about Muhammad and has another chance in Akhirah is much better than a kafir who heard and rejected him.
But the Quran is only to the ins and the jinn, well, to the man and the...
Yeah, let's assume Alami is the ins and jinn.
Yeah, because obviously, we've not said you as a reminder and a commander. So
we don't deny that. I'm saying this rahmah is not necessarily in the sense that people, if it had been in the sense of absolute rahmah, like the Christians say that God loved the world so much that He sacrificed His own son, which leads obviously contradiction. We need also to contradiction. Says that if Muhammad was not have been sent, those who have rejected Him and ended their fire would not have ended. Everyone would have been innocent without receiving any message. because the previous message have been so tampered with that they are not an authority enough to establish punishment Yawm al-Qiyamah.
Now, you mentioned that Maqasid came out of a defeated mentality through...
The argument today, not in time past.
Okay, so when it was created by Juwayni, Juwayni was Sheikh Haramain, Sheikh of the two mosques.
It started early, but it started as a study in the Sharia, not to deduce law. Nobody ever discussed even the issue. For example, the bureau of the Maqasid will tell you, the Maqsad of the Sharia, I'll tell you what they do, the defeated mentality. Say, Maqsad of the Sharia in cutting the hand is to prevent theft and protect wealth, protect legitimate wealth. But we can't fulfill that by present term nowadays.
Exactly. So then the point what you're saying is missed.
Okay.
That will be right. That will be right. They say that. Tariq Ramadan says and other. You have here Tariq Ramadan himself saying that.
Yeah.
And others.
What is that Ramadan say?
Present. Yeah, he says that the hudud is no need because we have alternatives now.
Yeah.
That's his thing.
That's it.
So his point.
Because the
Quran also refers that to chop off the hands. There's also the guy's livelihood. It's not necessarily meaning its hands. That's what it refers to.
No.
This is the new argument that has been said.
No,
this hand, bro.
This is the hand that the Prophet has done it, and we know what's physically hand. If we are talking about the hand of Allah, that may be metaphorical, although the Salafi will be upset about that. But if we talk about the hand of a human being, would be that hand that you have, and the scholar discussed exactly where to cut it. The Khawarij claim it should be cut from here, and the rest, no, from here. No. This is well established. Denying that's just denying history and going there in esoteric. Then we will end that. I know some people have said that, but if they have said that, does not mean that it makes any sense.
So where is the justification?
We have some Ismailis claiming that hell and paradise are just metaphorical, and that life is actually eternal, and it will be reincarnation, like the Hindu ideology, reincarnation ad infinitum. We have Ismaili who claiming to be reading the Quran in a metaphorical sense. Yeah, if you believe it in this sense, then we are in another ball game altogether. That's another philosophy altogether. It's another Islam. But we're talking about the classical Islam where the Quran is at face value as the language, Arabic language, and the normal sense perception and rationality dictate, unless a compelling reason from the Quran or the Sunnah or reason dictate that it has to be interpreted metaphorically.
So Shatibi, Ghazali, Juwayni, they all studied. They all went into the details as
just analyzing the sense of the Sharia, what is the purpose, and so on.
So then when did it become a source of law?
But it was never a source of law. Was never a source of law. It happened. Some scholars who think there is gods in the Sharia to be filled that they use what they call istihsan. Istihsan is something like taking maqasid and mafasid into consideration.
And that came in when?
Not straightforward. No, it started even the time of Sahaba, because not every Sahaba is aware about all the details of the law and the Sunnah.
You mean maslaha?
Not maslaha. They say هذا أشبه. This looks closer to the spirit of the Sharia, and more often than not, they were right, and the Sharia evidence had proven them to be right, because show that their way of thinking synchronized nicely with the Sharia. They understood it subconsciously. Like, for example, examples of that. Example and counter-example. Example of that is Ibn Mas'ud, who was asked about a woman which a man did the contract but did not consummate. So there was no consummation of the marriage, but the contract is done, and he did not even specify a mahar, a dowry yet, and then he died. Yeah. So the contract was done, the father offered, he accepted, she's his wife, but they did not have any intercourse yet, and they did not specify a mahar. At the Kafir Mas'ud, he refused to judge in case several times, said, you have to give some fatwa, what should we do with that? I will say according to my point of view, and Allah and His Messenger know best. That is not ihsan, that is putting pieces of the law in a complex case to get it in the right way, actually. He said, I believe she should get the mahar of a similar one in its society. That tribe has a habit of mahar, maybe £100, so she will get £100. Obviously from his estate. And because she is a wife, and he died, she will be in the list of inheritors of wives. If he has multiple wives or one wife, they will inherit, as we know. If he has no children, a quarter, or if he has children, they inherit an eighth. And because she is a wife, she has to sit the iddah of 4 months and 10 days.
So the iddah is nothing to do with the intercourse?
No, iddah is nothing to do with that, of course. No. The iddah is just for the death. It's for respect of death. That's it. The only thing which will make it different is that if she's pregnant, obviously that have been intercourse and she's pregnant, the childbirth will terminate the iddah. That's the only exception. But otherwise, it's for death is 4 and 10. So then someone came, or here the story came, and witnessed by Allah that the Messenger of Allah judged in Barwa' bint Washiq, that's a Bedouin young lady, which has exactly the same story, exactly the same ruling. And Mas'ud was so jubilant and so happy about that. It's tears were running down his eyes that his ruling was exactly his ruling. But you could say this is really the right way of putting the bits and pieces over. Because if a woman is promised a mahar but is not specified, then she should get the mahar of her equal in the same level of society. That's our established principle. If a husband dies, the Quran says clearly she has to 10 days and 4 months and 10 days. That's the idea of the death, just as a respect of the memory of the husband, with the exception of the pregnant ones, or the dispute between the scholars, but a stronger point of view, until give childbirth. And she's a wife. The wife is being a wife is by the contract. The consummation is just having the cake or having the icing on the top of the cake. The cake is there already. So she is a wife. She should inherit. So he did that correctly. He judged the three problems in one go in the right way. You could call that istihsan, putting things in the right way together. That's not really ihsan. Another example of the wrong istihsan is the example of Umar. He used to make the diya for the fingers differently. Now he knows that the diya, the blood money for the hand, is half of the 2 hands will be equal 1 human beings. So it is half hand, 50 camels for the hand. So if 50 camels, we have 5 fingers. So in the average, every finger will have 10 camels as a blood money. Fine. But he said, yes, we know that there, because if someone get all his fingers cut, then his hand is cut. He loses all fingers. He lost essentially his hand. Because what's about the hand is really the finger. That's what counts. So it must be per finger 10. But he said, no, the benefits of the finger are not the same. The smaller one is the least beneficial. And this one is the most important, from grabbing and so on. So he made that, I think, 15, this is 7, and made a scale there. And started ruling like that until someone came and reported from the Messenger of Allah had made all the fingers equal, 10, 10, 10, 10. He dropped his ruling and adopted them. If we didn't hear that from the Messenger of Allah, would have made them different according to the benefit. So he followed istihsan. The principle is synchronizing with the benefit, because usually in your mind, blood money is related to the benefit. If you cut somebody's 2 hands, it's almost like he's dead to start with, and still he has legs and he can do things. He's not completely dead, but it's almost comparable to being dead. So he has a full diya, 2 hands, and every hand is a half diya. That's already well established in Sharia. So he concluded from that by a fortiori until the fingers are made. So this is a kind of istihsan which sounds very reasonable, but it turns out to be not what the Sharia injunction. It is 10, 10, 10 each.
So what about when, as Ismail pointed
out, the Sahaba did do istihsan, based on understanding the Sharia has certain purposes. We are not denying that purposes.
Suspended the had punishment. Umar ibn Khattab suspended the Hajj.
Oh, this is a major misconception. The had punishment in the time of famine, because to have the had, it must be a theft with all its qualified condition. One of the qualities is that if someone is not hungry, is not in need. If you are in need and you are hungry, you can't take. And you ask the people to give you. If they don't give you take by force if necessary. That's not a problem. This is Sharia. We are not a capitalist society. Islam society is different. No. You have a right on the people around you if you are hungry that you feed.
But for example, like let's say in New Orleans in the US or in LA when people are working 2 or 3 jobs, they have so much debt.
Then is the condition applied for them?
Huge.
If they are under debts that they need help and the zakah is not given to them, then they can't take by force.
No, but then what happens is there becomes this flood or there's this tornado. People start looting the shops.
Yeah, then there's no cutting in the hand is that. Because the people need that for survival. They need to loot the shop to eat.
Well, they are not looting. No, but they're stealing televisions and computer systems and...
Yeah, I agree with you, but the problem is that we cannot distinguish what is the need there, what is not the need. That's one who is really the hungry one who went to take something, and the place is deserted and has no control, and it is open, it has no lock, and also there must be a lock and seal on the place of the place.
No, people are smashing. You've seen the cameras are smashing it. They're taking the TV.
Then it had to be cutting the hand. The judge will judge the situation. But this is what Umar did. Is not abolishing the Sharia. He applied the Sharia properly. The conditions for the had must be fulfilled. Must be fulfilled without any doubt. If there is any doubt, then it will be interpreted in the benefit of the of the accused, not the opposite.
Mistrial.
That later in Islamic history, some fuqahas are becoming more tyrannical and more tuned to oppressive governments and messed up with the Sharia. We have, for example, on record, people like Ibn al-Qayyim advocating flogging the one who accused of theft until he admits that he committed the theft.
Torture.
Yeah, torture. We have such blunders. Ibn Hazm obviously is in his comments thunders against that in such a bad way. It's unbelievable, which is right. Which is right. So this is not acceptable. And they put condition like to make us that if the things are found in his house, things could be found in your house, somebody put it there mischievously. That is not an evidence. If you say that I didn't steal, and by torturing, any admission of torturing is invalid. That's what established in Islam. And still some later fuqaha went to this. Otherwise, theft cannot be controlled. That is their imagination.
Not even in this society, torture, duress under torture is evidence is null and void.
Yeah, because it does not make any sense.
Yeah.
Because if it's beaten, will admit anything. Depending upon the level. Some people have a very high tolerance level, some people very low tolerance. But the Sharia injunction is clear. There's no torture in Islam. There's the intelligent interrogation and catching him and putting him in contradiction until he surrenders intellectually, but not physically.
Okay, I think we're going into many doors now.
No,
left and right. Can you?
We're focusing on that point.
Your conclusion
What I'm concluding is that what these people of Maqasid are saying, there are Maqasid. Nobody is denying that. Their claim de facto is that these maqasid are the reason for the Sharia, so we can make them the asl in which we can deduce and deduce laws or even change the law. That's not acceptable. That's definitely will undermine Sharia completely.
And the example of that type Ramadan about the Hajj.
That's not acceptable. If it is said it has this a good purpose, nobody is denying that. Many places in the Quran, for example, the case of qisas, Allah says for the qisas. ولكم في القصاص حياة. For in qisas, in retribution, there is life for you people who have reason. Because if there is retribution, there will be some deterrence. There will be some internal compensation for the one who wrong. Even in countries where abolish the death penalty, the moment you are the one who's suffering, you are the victim or the relative of the victim, and you see your brother or daughter killed, the moment you see that, you will recognize the great value which qisas has, that you have the right to ask for the death of the killer or for blood money, or you can forgive him. And you have all the three choices. And in several cases which has happened that people were killed, for example in Arabia, where this principle of qisas is more or less still enforced, the relatives, there was an Australian family, one of the relatives were killed in Saudi Arabia, and they were giving this right of taking the blood money, and the brother insisted. And they asked him in television, say, I feel really the real satisfaction. Yes, I may forgive, but I'm not willing to forgive this guy who killed my brother. I want his head. And this gives me real satisfaction. So it gives life for the people behind that at least justice is done to them, and their mind.
Can I give a modern scenario? Yes. Let's give a modern scenario.
So nobody is denying these purposes.
Can I just give a modern scenario? Yeah. Let's say, for example, there's a husband and wife, and they have a child. Like I think we've heard this baby P example, where I don't know, you've got a 3-4-year-old baby boy or girl. They batter the baby to death. What happens to them? Okay, obviously both relatives are the culprits. So who now has the right to say, I forgive you,
there's certain say injunctions about that the parents cannot be killed by the child, etc. And that has to be sorted.
The parents killing the child.
Yeah, they cannot be killed for the child, but they could be punished otherwise.
In what sort of
imprisonment, whatever, flogging, whatever.
Alright, imagine we've got a serial killer. He kills one person, somebody says, I'll take the money. He kills another person, I'll take the money. Okay.
There are solutions, the fuqaha have discussed that. Some of them said if it's a serial killer, it is obviously not someone killing in anger or in reaction. He's a systematic killer, or he's the one who is a planned killer. Because the killing which can be forgiven or can blood money is like a personal in the state of anger. Any killing which is done in a gun crime or in a violent crime, planned crime, like in a robbery, etc., is not included in that. There's fine points there. And the Sharia will take care of that. That's not a problem. We're not talking about absolute here, but talking about a principle. It will not be abrogated because it will be restricted because the Sharia has already the restriction that. Yeah? Sharia already had, the text has already. That some fuqaha missed it and somehow that's possible. That's humanly possible. That's not a mistake of the scholar or his limitation, which is possible. Nobody said that what the scholar have deduced from that the fiqh which we have in the books is what Allah's law. This is the understanding and the best effort of that faqih. Hopefully the best effort. We know sometimes not the best effort. This is maybe it's a treachery there. Like some government scholars advocating things related to government and imama, etc. It's plenty of it is treachery, so it has to be sorted out. But we are talking about the fundamental principle. Is the fundamental principle sound? It's not. That the Sharia injunction, most of them has an immediate purpose in this dunya, yes. But this should not divert attention from the purpose, because you cannot compare Sharia which has come to test your obedience to Allah ultimately and to prepare you for the eternal life with someone who says this dunya is eternal, or I don't know about that, this is irrelevant. This cannot be comparison. Any comparison will be unfair, will be irrational. So if they compare any Sharia injunction of Islam to one of the secular state or of secular society, this is unfair to the secular society, because secular society never said this will be beneficial you for an akhirah or bring you to God or far away from Him. Say, we have nothing to do with God. God, mind your business. We are doing our business here. That's what they are saying. So how can you compare someone who said God instructed that and mercifully He wants this and this is duty to happen beside the great benefit in akhirah? It can't be any comparison. It can't be any comparison. It should not be. And that's the reason myself and many other Islamic activists recently have become very sensitive towards this issue of Maqasid Sharia, because they know it is being used now, blocking the means. We are trying to block the means to abusing, because it's very evident that it's being used to undermine Sharia. It can't be abused. If it is used to understand Sharia, if it is used to, like for example, if we know the purpose of one of the purposes of qisas is that it's life for us. It is give you psychological relaxation for the one who insists on qisas, or even take the blood money. Someone could say, okay, I lost my dear one, but he was the provider for a family. I should be a reasonable human being. Instead of taking the head of the guy without anybody benefiting very much, let me take money. 100 camel is a substantial mention. Nowadays it will equate easily to something like 300, 400,000. This is substantial wealth. You could start with it, some small business which you can survive on as a provider. That's not bad. That is maybe not the ideal case of complete forgiveness, but I'm not able of that now. Another one who is rich and he doesn't need, say, why should I take the life of that? Let me forgive him and I get all my sins washed until up to that day. It's a great benefit. Let me do that. Secular society will never offer you that. This internal peace, this life. Besides, for the society, it will be deterrent, because there will be few people who are staunch enough to insist on striking the neck. And striking the neck will have a good deterrent value for many people, not for everyone. There will be criminals who are so vicious, whatever strike you, next you strike, they don't care. We know that. But at least a number of half reasonable people will be deterred by that.
But the same, even if they come out of prison, there is no guarantee they won't stop killing.
Prison, if you notice that in Islam is barely any imprisonment. I was discussing with Ismail about the imprisonment of adulterous women until it was abrogated. We're not going to this point specifically, but there is no Sharia injunction whatsoever about imprisonment anywhere and punishment. And you could see really the wisdom of the Sharia, because prison is one of the worst types, except detention for interrogation and for checking a case and preventing someone from running away, which is, there's a certain reason for that in Sharia, and we have some one or two ahadith. But generally there is no detention. Detention is usually one of the worst punishment you could arrive. First of all, usually people will be detained in a central facility. There's no way to detain everyone in his own house or separately. That's practical. So they'll be in a central facility. Central facility, you have hundreds of thousands of people coming together. There will be a mix. There will be some who are vicious criminals, some who are less. And the end result, the vicious criminal will control the lesser one, educate him to become bigger criminals. Secondly, the family of the imprisoned one will be deprived from a husband or son or a carer, and a woman from a husband and so on, forced either to divorce or adultery. Thirdly, although sometimes they are forced to work, but as a forced labor, it's maybe part of the punishment, but this will usually not compensate and pay off the cost of them. Fourthly, it's a cost for the state and society to keep these prisons. All of that is one of the worst parts. And the claim that they reform there, I'm doubtful. I don't think
it's nonsense. They said in factual documentation that they said that one of the biggest problems in the United Kingdom and in America is repeat offenders.
Yeah.
They go in there to come out to become better criminals.
Better criminals. They learn from the others more tools and ways of doing the crimes, become members of gangsters, and the very weak and submissive become tools for the bosses and criminals there, possibly even homosexual tools. They will get raped there and become even homosexual prostitutes. That's all well known. Prison is not a good punishment. And we can't see that rationally. And in Islam, there is no really prison term, except in very few. There is not a prison term for interrogation, holding until someone does not run away. Few things like that.
Okay, just to wrap this all up, could you give a precise? Okay, just one more question before we wrap up.
I'm going to go back to Tariq Ramadan because Guy is an intelligent guy. He obviously has a history behind him, and he must have.
No, this is the fiction. He thinks Allah is obliged to do the best for us. That's not. Allah is not obliged. I'm saying that claim will end in kufr, in straightforward kufr. Allah is not obliged. It's just the opposite. Allah says, I give you an injunction like Adam, don't eat from the tree. This is the best tree in the universe, but don't eat from it, otherwise I'm going to break your neck.
Okay.
And let's see if you obey or not.
Look, your nutshell conclusion, please.
The Sharia has come to fulfill the two reasons for the creation of the universe. Allah خلق الجن والإنس إلا ليعبدون. الذي خلق الموت والحياة ليبلوكم أيكم أحسن عملا. The one who created life and death to test you. That is the universe. This universe is a testing universe. That's number one. Secondly, jinn and humans, or conscious beings generally, have been only created to worship Allah, meaning to submit Him. That's the only meaning of worship in that sense, to submit to Him, to His command. So that's the purpose of the creation. Why Allah shows that? That's His. That's the way He is. That's one of His attributes.
That's His right.
That's His right, and that's His attribute. That's the way He is. Why He did that? Because that's the way He is. He could have otherwise, another entity could have chosen another one. But the divine entity, the only one, the eternal, has that choice. Mercifully and kindly, many of these injunctions are beneficial. No doubt about that. But someone could say even more benefit, more kindness would have been there without having any injunction of obligation or prohibition. Just advice. That's very well possible. Would be a very kind advisor, a very soft type of God. That's possible. But He's not like that. That's what He is. So you have to accept that. That's number one. That the Sharia has maqasid, especially the final Sharia, permits all good things and prohibited all evil things and makes life well balanced and reasonable. But there will be also some injunction, some limitation, which still there to test obedience and still there to give many the opportunity, if they sin, to have repentance. Because also one of the purposes of the creation is that the conscious beings will be committing sin and they will repent to Allah. Allah loves to forgive sin and repentance. There are many hadith in that which I will not quote today, maybe another time. This is also a very important consideration. So the claim that because someone could say, based on that Allah loves that the people who do sin repent. And this is not one hadith or two. This is tawatur. I have listed it once, and this is in my library. Meaning there will be sufficiently hard, not extremely hard, but a bit of harshness in injunctions that will be sufficient many sinful people who will repent. Otherwise, if he doesn't want to be repented to, he would have nothing obligatory and nothing to be repented about. So this is all will get someone in the devil's kitchen, in an infinite regress, or in the real alternative is the atheistic alternative, or a pseudo-atheistic. That's a gigantic machine which works from all eternities according to a mechanism, and all what we regard as free will is just illusory. So our session in that is just predetermined. We are imagining that we are sitting here by our choice. It's the alternative. Is this absolute mechanism which is just grinding for all eternities. If you have really true freedom of will, and the true free agent, ultimate one, then it ultimately will be his final decision which makes that. It can't be just the immediate benefit that khamr will intoxicate you and you go and beat your wife. That's the reason it has been prohibited. It has more to it than that. Okay. And that's not the reason that it can be avoided. For example, if that's the reason, then someone who does not get intoxicated will say, I can't drink khamr, I don't get intoxicated. I have sufficient strength to stop there. So for me it's halal. Is it halal for him? No. But the injunction has come to everyone. The one who gets intoxicated by one glass and the one who doesn't. There's a famous historical piece that Socrates was such a person that he could stay all night long drinking khamr and take all the people who fell asleep with him in their bed and then walk home without even wavering. So would a man like Socrates living with us now be exempt from the ruling of khamr? No, because he's also obliged to obedience.